Chapter 18. And then there were 3. We started married life in St. Petersburg, Florida, in a house Russ's folks bought in 1965. It was old and outdated, but it was our own little place, perfect for just the 2 of us. Unfortunately, it wasn't just the 2 of us. Jerry Porter was living there as well. This friend of the family was a misogynist. He had a character that you knew from the moment you met him was off-kilter. He'd been living in the house long before we came, so naturally we had no intention of asking him to leave. I had met a lot of different and unique people, but never had to live with them. For me, it was difficult. I was trying to be a sweet, submissive, obedient wife, but Jerry thought the obedient part extended to him as well. I adored Russ and had him on a pedestal, but this shadow that followed him everywhere seemed determined to ruin our relationship. If Russ found something I had done was silly, Jerry found it hilarious. If Russ asked me to do something, Jerry would repeat the order with emphasis. If we were having an argument, Jerry backed Russ 100%, regardless of who was right. He blew every situation and problem out of proportion. So with Jerry's support, Russ took full advantage of his newfound position as king of the castle. Russ worked for a local garden nursery. I worked at 7-Eleven, a convenience store a few blocks away, and dreaded it. I was fresh out of Bible school and working on Sundays, selling cigarettes and alcohol, and pulling Playboy from the shelf behind me. Every man that bought one got the evil eye as I tossed it into his bag. This job was not for me. I was about to close the store late one evening when a young man walked in. He perused every aisle before approaching the counter. I was at the register totaling the day's sales when he quietly mumbled something. Not wanting to lose count, I raised the palm of my hand and said, "1 moment, sir, I'm counting my money." He hesitated, as if he wasn't sure what to do next. He must have glanced around one more time before blurting out, "I said this is a hold-up." Shifting my eyes away from the money, I looked up at what appeared to be a gun under a red handkerchief. Surprisingly, I was perfectly calm, possibly because he was so nervous. He appeared more frightened than I was. There was no reason for both of us to be anxious. I took the pouch he handed me, gathered up the money, and stuffed it into the bag. Turning to the second register, I asked, "Do you want the money from that one too?" He seemed surprised at my eagerness to assist him and nodded slightly. I emptied the second register and he was on his way. It wasn't until after he left that it occurred to me what had just happened, and I fell apart. The police and manager came quickly, but having Russ show up was what I needed most. I was glad I had the next couple of days off, as I had a doctor's visit in St. Petersburg. I wanted to start on birth control, but postponed making the appointment until a couple of months after the wedding. During the exam, she looked at me and said, "I'm afraid it's too late. It looks like you're already pregnant." I couldn't believe it. I was barely a wife, and now I was going to be a mother. My boss moved me to the day shift. Morning sickness came on with a vengeance and lasted all day. There were numerous times I would leave customers standing in line while I ran to the bathroom to throw up. At that point, Jerry Porter was history. Thanks to my husband's intuitive, thoughtful nature, which I gently aroused with, "It's either him or me." We were forced to apply for state assistance, as we had no insurance or money. The state paid for Lamaze classes, or our instructor assured us that as long as we concentrated on our breathing exercises, labor would not be that difficult. I listened to the girls in the neighborhood talk about tales of horror and hair-raising pain, but I felt rather smug. They were not prepared. I had taken the course. I had passed the class, and I was ready. I was not going to have the kind of problems they were discussing. I was barely in true labor when I wished I'd paid closer attention in Lamaze class. Doing a few breathing exercises and getting a certificate didn't prepare me for the actual event. The pain the neighborhood girls described didn't even come close to what I was experiencing. It felt like a Charlie horse of tsunami proportions, sending waves of pain from my diaphragm to my bladder. As labor progressed, I fell asleep between contractions and jolted back to reality every few minutes. For what seemed like hours, I fought each contraction. Every muscle was taut. My fingers and toes were splayed out like a peacock's tail. I ached everywhere for days afterward. There were no epidurals, no spinal blocks, no medication that could stop the pain. "Don't leave me," I cried, clutching Russ's hand as the wave subsided. The moment it was gone, I would fall into a deep slumber. I was dreaming of a wonderful table laid out with delightful food, cold drinks, and a pleasing aroma. But as I reached out to take them, they disappeared into a horrific contraction. "This is it," I told myself. "This will be our only child." I was in labor for almost 24 hours before Kim arrived. She was the most beautiful baby I had ever seen. She had a perfectly formed head with a widow's peak on her forehead. I was never attracted to infants, and I can't recall playing with baby dolls. Still, when I held my little bundle for the first time, I was amazed by the amount of love I had for her. It not only gushed out for her, but spilled over toward Russ as he stood by our side. If I, as an earthly mother, had such indescribable feelings for our daughter, I couldn't imagine the overwhelming amount of love God had for me. I quit my job at 7-Eleven and took in another infant. I planned to babysit to bring in a few extra dollars. It wasn't long before Russ was hired at a phosphate company in Port Manatee, not far from his family's property. He started work the following Monday morning, and I decided I was leaving with him. So, without notice to the mom of my charge, we packed up and left. I pictured her holding her infant as she banged on our door with no response. The thought of her waiting helplessly haunted me for years. It reminded me of something my father would have done. Certainly not my proudest moment.